Seven. Yes. Next week. Yeah, well, thank you so much for putting that. Thank you for lifting sharing us and letting the work. The tool that you will be with us, you know, and God knows. Mhm. Today, we'll be reviewing a study by Edna. It was done last year. Yeah, the title of the study is just a minute. Sunday Law and the 2024 Alliance. Okay, so the title of the study that we are reviewing today was done by Edna. It's called Sunday Law and the 2024 Alliance. So we are not going to review all the study, uh, just specific portions of it. But for information, she talks about UFMG and its relation to family. She also talks about the demands and the section of Catholicism reverted into. Then she proceeds to talk about the parties that are present at the Republican National Convention, like the religious, Baptist, conservative, Catholic, conservative, Christian nationalist, all of that. So we're not going to look at that. I'm interested in just a specific portion of that study that you're going to analyze today. So I'm going to quote her the first paragraph. I'm quoting her directly. She says, let's consider the presidential candidates of 2024. Tim Walz. What kind of masculinity does he represent? Positive masculinity. So, what kind of masculinity does he represent? Positive masculinity. This model is not a radical departure. Positive masculinity still draws on all the old trappings and anxiety of traditional manliness. The same belief that there is such a thing as a real man, and same fears of falling short. Therefore, Democrats have nothing to offer radical feminists. They have failed the test. So therefore, therefore they have failed the test. End of quote. So anyway, before I ask my question, let me read the paragraph again. Let's consider the presidential candidates of 2024. Jim Walz, what kind of masculinity does he represent? Positive masculinity. And then she says, this model is not a radical departure. Positive masculinity still builds on all the old trappings and anxiety of traditional manliness, the same belief that there is such a thing as a real man, and same fears of falling short. Therefore, Democrats have nothing to offer radical feminists. So my question is, um, what gives us the license to say that Democrats have failed the test and they have nothing to offer radical feminists? What do you think that? What would we say they have failed the test that represent wisdom and stability and all those good things? Why? Where have they failed in this? Yeah, because feminism.
It is radical.
What study? Obviously.
I think whether we should examine first whether that conclusion is correct. Because I think you are taking like the conclusion that by the day that you fail the test and then we're speaking from there. So the examination would begin from understanding the issue that she used, which is positive masculinity, and understanding types of masculinity or something, whether there is negative, and then there is positive, and then there is neutral, or from there first. I don't know if anyone can comment on masculinity, whether there is a correct one, wrong one, explanation of negative, positive, or neutral.
Okay, so uh, as a movement, do we believe in masculinity? Okay. Um, so maybe I'll tell you what I had in mind. So when we say Democrats have failed the test, they have nothing to offer us in radical feminists. I immediately thought of this dispensation. So we have 2019 on the line of the piece 2019, and we have 2021. This is Benham, this is Rakia. So here we have I think it was April. I'm not sure about the date. April 2020, and it was August 2021. I'm not possible about the date. Externally here we see George Floyd, and then internally, what studies do you have? It is good. Externally here we have Afghanistan. Internally we have the BBQ, right? Yeah. So so from these studies of the APIS bull, what was the objective of the APIS bull? Or what did the elder just want us to understand from the studies of the APIS bull in just a few sentences? What did she want us to understand from these studies of the APIS bull?
You see the mindset.
The mindset. What mindset?
So I think basically the study was trying to take us to the Jewish kingdom and to show us they didn't understand the nature of the kingdom. Reason being they had formed a certain God in their own mindset. So when the true God, or I mean a certain perspective in their own mindset. So when Christ came in their dispensation, they could not recognize the nature of the nature of the king or the kingdom because they had that idolatry of an earthly king who is glorious, powerful.
Yeah.
So they didn't understand the nature of the kingdom because of the mindset that they had. So idolatry was twofold: the form and the character. So taking that to our dispensation, the test of the time, the issue at hand. So the Elder Pes was trying to show us the nature of God's kingdom, that it's a kingdom of equality. But this equality, some of us, the mindset is the problem. We have formed a certain perspective of how God's kingdom looks like, and just like the Jewish kingdom.
What you're saying is closer to what your study comes to. The start sentence. Another thing that the APIS board did was to lead us to challenge our understanding of God, how God looks like, and the characteristics of the APIS group appear to represent God as masculine, and a warrior, and all the attributes that are often given to men and masculinity. So that's how you get us to question that. Yeah, I agree. Anybody else? So in simple terms, I think what Elbert has wanted us to understand is the worship of masculinity. I don't know this thing. The worship of masculinity, the worship of stereotypical masculine traits, which we already listed here. That is what is desirable. I think that is what Elbert has wanted to understand. So So then, how do we move from the studies of the Apis bull to marriage or to gender or LGBTQ rights? How do we move from this understanding to this topic? What is the connection? What is the connection? Now we've understood what masculinity is. So what is the connection? How do you from here to here? We don't really know. I guess maybe how do we connect the two studies? Okay, so in my own understanding, um, historically, same-sex relations are looked down upon. Same-sex relationships are looked down upon because society considers marriage to be between a dominant and a submissive. So if the male is dominant, how then can you have two males together, or how then can you have two females together? So the study of the episode showed us what is worshipped. And then now we brought when we come to this dispensation of 2021, and we have the correct understanding of radical feminism, we think that we no longer accept this model. And so we introduced LGBTQ rights. So marriage can be between a male and a female, a male and a male, or a female and a female. So we no longer buy into this idea of what masculinity is. So I'm going to read something. So we've said the objective of the APIS Glow study was to help us understand what is working and what is desired. The male is dominant, therefore it is worshipped. And then we also said that the APIS Glow taught us what was acceptable and what was not allowed as a. And so, how does this study develop into LGBTQ rights? So, in the APIS book, there has to be a dominant and a submissive, a protector and one who's protected, a provider and the one who's provided for. So, there must be someone who fills in the masculine ideal of what a man has to be. And then let me say that. So when people say see a gay couple and they ask them that so katikati ya nyinyi wawili who is the man and who's the woman, that is quite common. But what they're exposing is not just ignorance; it is the episode mindset, which is in a relationship there has to be a dominant and the one who's being dominated. So when people ask a gay couple this question, they're not just being ignorant; they're exposing a system that is obsessed with power goals. The question is a symptom of the episode mindset, the idea that someone has to lead, someone has to conquer, someone has to pursue, someone has to dominate, someone has to provide, and the other person now is on the other side of the spectrum. Okay, so that is how I see the connection between the episode mindset and gender. So this one defies the rules. This one does not agree with this. This one doesn't agree with it. So I just remembered something. A few years ago, my brother used to come home late, and my dad took note of his behavior. So one time he waited for him and told him, "You must stop coming home late. It's either you shape up or you shape out." So my brother wasn't taking him seriously. And the next time he came home late, my dad waited for him, and then he told him, kwa hii nyumba hatuwezi kuwa ndume wawili. Translated as, in this house there can't be two rules. In this house there can't be two dominants. It's either I'm the dominant one or you're the dominant one. And if you want to be the dominant one, you pack your things and leave the house. So what am I saying? The episode mindset is alive, but it's very common in society. Um, yeah, it's very common, very rampant. This symptom is common in society. That's what I'm trying to say. All right. Any additions before we move on?
Just something also. Uh, connect the study of rapist rule and LGBTQ. I remember in the case of studies on Eden, Canaan, and Stonewall. So, based on those studies, the what she was trying to demonstrate was the Bible is not so clear on the issue of LGBTQ. So, as you would go to the issue of race and gender, like looking from the model Eden to Eden, like internally from the script, you can see the line of restoration. But it was not so clear because even the verses that are there and how people used to interpret them was, I think, the wrong way. So, based on the principle of internal and external, she goes to the external history and traces these kingdoms that interact with God's people, right from Assyria of Mesopotamia, Rome, Greece, all that, until USA. And she's trying to tell us and show us that the problem with today's society is that they have adopted the practices that were done by those pagan kingdoms, and they have assumed that those practices is what we have as uh, the LGBTQ. It is what she marks the liberals in America specifically think that the issue of pederasty, kinaidos, that act of dominance, one is submissive, one is the dominant one, is the same practice we have today. And she was trying to challenge that that's the wrong perspective. So it's the same issue of mindset. So the issue of mindset is again carried to the understanding of the issue of LGBTQ, that we have wired ourselves the wrong way and we have been influenced by society, where society has adopted those practices that you can see from the pagan kingdoms.
Thank you. I
Something else. So at the beginning, you kind of asked us whether we could do the masculinity, and I don't know, maybe at the end of the class, we don't know what we do. I just wanted to um make this point that at the point where, at least I think, at the point where Israelites were making the artist room and worshiping it, and I mean, you know, it's wrong. God felt like it was actually wrong for them to do that. But to some extent or to some point, they were creating a representation of God that they had seen. So these are people who had taken out of Egypt um, in the manner in which they had been taken out of that place. And I'm thinking they were looking at you and trying to conceptualize who this God is, and this God seemed to look like a warrior. I mean, I know there is some influence of Egyptian religion into that and what Pharaoh is presenting. But what I'm saying is they when they looked at their God and what their God had done to them, they could see this warrior kind of um person with this kind of characteristics. Which I, I'm thinking maybe the problem was they wanted to only define God in those terms. Maybe God is bigger than just the characteristics wanted to go to. So that kind of makes me think. I mean, was the problem the fact that they were only defining God as giving God only those attributes, or the fact that God is not that, only God is not that? Either God is not all that, or God is that more, and they were limiting that division of God, just saying God is not.
Okay, so let's continue putting in the table and analyze what she says. Masculinity presented by the Republican Party is best referred to as neo-patriarchal masculinity. They are the neo-patriarchal right. The key ideas of this include persistence of gender roles, men are providers and protectors, women are for domestic responsibilities and child rearing. They use cultural and religious justification for their gender roles, and they are in direct opposition to feminist movement. And so you can have a situation where you have economic growth and development without dismantling the patriarchy. Women can enter the workforce. Let's do this. Let's compare and contrast Democrats and Republicans. So we have Democrats. This board is small. I don't know how we can. Democrat and Republican. So Democrat, um, they present us with positive masculinity. An example is Team One. This one they present us with neo-patriarchal masculinity. An example would be an example of a Republican who presents neo-patriarchal masculinity. But it's not is a very good example. Okay, let's compare and contrast. So I'll start with it again. They're the new patriarchal rights. The key ideas of this include persistence of gender roles. I'm not sure if I'm going to write it. Gender roles, persistence of gender roles, men are providers and protectors, women are for domestic responsibilities and child rearing. They use cultural and religious justification for their gender roles, and they are intended to portray feminist movements. And this one's in direct opposition to feminist movements. People who support positive masculinity. Are Democrats are Democrats in opposition to feminist movements? No, because they are we could say they are liberal feminists. This one supports feminism. Um, and then we are still quoting on the theory. She says you can have economic growth for Republicans. You can have economic growth and development without dismantling the patriarchy. Why? Because women can enter the workforce, but basically they have two jobs. Um, they have two jobs. The primary job. So the primary job is child rearing, domestic responsibility. You're a wife or you're a mother. Let me just put it like this. And then the second job is your career, basically. And it is in that order. First of all, you're a wife or a mother, and then secondly, you cannot pursue your career. They are not that. That's where I was saying we can have economic growth and development without dismantling the patriarchy. All right. We are the quote continues. They believe in the role of the state through laws and policies and social programs that incentivize marriage, discourage divorce, and promote child rearing as the primary role of a woman. Good. So that is it. So we can see the difference between masculinity represented by the African body and masculinity by by this positive masculinity. All right. So now, what do I want to do? So any additions? Any additions to that? Okay. So I think yes.
Okay. Can we pull them characteristics instead of compare and contrast?
Can we do what?
Like these are characteristics of Democrats, teachers, these are Republicans. Like, what I'm questioning is whether that is accurately comparison and contrasting. Like you say positive versus neo-patriarchal.
Hmm.
To me, in my mind, is like whether it's positive it could be negative. And neo-patriarchal, maybe this it could be something patriarchal, something which is direct opposite or comparison. Is
I don't understand.
what do you mean by neo-patriarchal?
What do you mean by neo-patriarchal
And then
masculinity?
we,
I will go into that shortly. That's what I could do. Okay.
yeah, that's a question. So I can see what
So we'll do that.
compare.
Yes, no.
I just wanted to respond, but if you don't.
Okay. So okay. I want to know.
Right.
Oh, sorry. Let me just the headache. The total of my study was
Unity.
okay. Okay, so we have looked at so far two types of masculinity. We have not looked at them in detail. We're going to do that shortly. So let us look at other types of masculinity and what we as radical feminists would say about it. So I will have type here. The type, we have the type and then the features. And then our start. Radical feminists. Okay. Which other type of masculinity do you know? Apart from the positive one you mentioned and the new patriarchal. Yes? Toxic masculinity. Which other? Okay, so the first one is called hegemonic. Hegemonic masculinity. So this one is the dominant ideal in most cultures, and the traits include authority, strength, stoicism, heterosexuality, emotional suppression. These people believe that men are the providers, they are the protectors, and they are the leaders. And they marginalize people who do not conform, like gay men, for example. And then they also marginalize women and people who do not fit into this mold. So let me write the pictures. Authority. Yes, yes. Thank you. Mhm. Heterosexuality. Men are the leaders, providers. They're the providers, they're the leaders, etc. I won't erase everything for the sake of space, because clearly we don't have space. They marginalize women and men who not fit the mold. For example, queer men. So such people will say, men don't try, be a man, don't show emotion, etc. An example of a hegemonic masculine man would be, what is an example of a hegemonic masculine man? Yes. Yes. Americans. Americans. I think so, but I was thinking Americans would be for toxic masculinity. But I get why you would say that. I'll explain shortly. I'm thinking fathers, fathers or husbands. All right, so what do we say as radical feminists?
So, just a question. Is it general, any father, or what?
Like typical cultural fathers who assert authority, they believe, spend the leaders and the providers. So a radical feminist, what do they say? This is the most dominant oppressive form. It enforces male superiority, violence, and gender roles. Radical feminists reject it completely and say it dismantles structures that promote this. It is rejected by radical feminists. Okay, the second type of masculinity is toxic masculinity. If you tell us about this toxic masculinity. How does it manifest in society?
I like when I think of toxic masculinity, I think of social things because they are typically they seem to be against women or at least women,
Yeah.
whatever problems they face. So for them, it's not just superiority; it's superiority, and I don't know, feeling the need to oppress and just attack the other gender.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Toxic masculinity. This is a harmful subset of the hegemonic masculinity. So this is a subset of this, and the traits include aggression, control, dominance over women, rejection of vulnerability, etc. They encourage violence, emotional suppression, and misogyny. Often, it is used to uphold rape culture homophobia, and male entitlement. So aggression, dominance, reflection of vulnerability, control, encourages violence, misogyny, misogyny. Um, it is often used to uphold rape culture, homophobia, and male entitlement. Rape culture, an example of a toxic masculine role. Americs. Americs. Well, Andrew Kibe, Andrew Tate, the Andrew. Anybody else? That's it, people very much. I don't know. Um, so yeah, that is what I know about toxic masculinity. So let's read what radical feminists say about. Radical feminists call this out as the most dangerous form of masculinity. It produces rape culture, domestic abuse, and male entitlement. The goal isn't to transform it, it is to completely reject it. Rejected. Any additions? What we've covered today? Or we proceed? So, masculinity number 3, called complicit. Complicit masculinity. What is complicit masculinity? Complicit masculinity refers to men who don't fully embody hegemonic masculinity. So these are men who don't embody any of these traits. But they still benefit from the patriarchal system. Often they stay silent and passive while others afford male dominance. These men may not be violent, they may not be violent or loud or toxic, but they are comfortable enough not to disrupt the system because the skill works in their favor. An example of a complicit masculine guy. So I have like 5 examples. Um, so let us look. I don't know what is this reading. So I'm saying these people, they do not embody hegemonic masculinity. They may not be violent, they may not be toxic, but they stay silent because patriarchy still works in their favor. So what is an example of a complicit masculine guy? Number 1, the nice guy at work. He believes in gender equality, but he will stay quiet when women are interrupted, passed over for promotion, or subjected to sexist jokes. He wouldn't harass a woman at work, but he will support the male boss who does for career reasons. So that is one example of a complicit masculine guy. Number 2, the progressive boyfriend or husband. He supports your career in theory, but he still expects you to cook for him, clean for him, remember his mom's birthday. And he will say, I will never cheat. I will never cheat on you. But watches content that objectifies women, like pornography or unrooted content and underage, etc. Things like that. So that is a progressive boyfriend under the category of complicit masculinity. The silent ally is another example. He will repost feminist quotes on Instagram, but in his male WhatsApp groups, he never speaks up when his friends share misogynist memes or talk about women disrespectfully. He agrees with you, but he will never defend you. That is a silent ally, an example of complicit masculinity. Another example, the male feminist in active spaces. He uses all the right terms: intersectionality, toxic masculinity, emotional labor, but always has to be the loudest voice, the leader, and the one organizing everything. When a woman speaks, we frame their point to sound smarter, and then give credit, and then get the credit. Sorry. So that was a male feminist in active spaces. Another example of a complicit guy. This is the father who helps out at home. He changes diapers once in a while. He cooks once in a while. But when he does that, he gets praised for it. But the emotional labor, planning, cleaning, all the invisible work is all on the woman. He does the bare minimum, but he gets the standing ovation for it. Does that make sense? We understand our complicit masculine guy. So I really know what to write because there's a lot to write. Um, they don't fully embody. I keep on misplacing this thing. It's not this one. They don't fully embody hegemonic masculinity, but they are silent. But they are silent. They are silent. They are silent because patriarchy works in a favor. Um, And then another thing to note about complicit guys, these people will say they're feminists. They will say they're feminists. Oh, I believe in women equality. I support women working and doing things like that. But they are silent. The feminism is just in words, nothing else. Okay, so what do we as radical feminists say about that? Complicit masculinity. So a radical feminist would say silence is still violence. Complicit men are the ones patriarchy protects the most because they appear harmless. But their silence keeps the system running just as efficiently. Radical feminism holds these men accountable. They benefit from patriarchy even if they don't abuse women directly. Complicit masculinity is comfortable masculinity. Radical feminists reject it. Any additions? We proceed. Another type of masculinity is yes.
And I'm just struggling to see how that. Okay, well, first, what is masculinity? I don't know if we said that. What complicit? wh- How I'm struggling to see how this is masculinity because it just sounds like someone who is complicit, not necessarily masculinity. Just someone who is complicit. You can explain.
Well, the way I understand masculinity is dominance. Masculinity is a man believing that there is a definition of what manliness is, and they have to show that they believe there is something. The male is dominant, or there's the way masculinity manifests in society. So this complicit guy, he may say he supports feminism, but at home he'll expect you to do for him because he's the male. But he will say, I support women working, things like that, but his feminism is just words, but he will expect you just to do everything. Where would expect you to do this? That's how I understand. Maybe I'm not explaining it quickly, but we could go back to it. And so masculinity number 4, subordinated masculinity. What is subordinated masculinity? If you could guess subordinated masculinity. Okay, so subordinate masculinity. These are men who are marginalized because they don't conform to dominant ideals. It includes gay men, emotional men, disabled men, men who reject toughness, and they are often the target of ridicule or violence from hegemonic men. So these are men who they don't conform to dominant ideals. An example is gay men, um, emotional men, disabled men, men who reject toughness. And these people are usually the targets of ridicule or violence from hegemonic men. All right. So what do we say to that? Is radical feminists. So radical feminists will say your oppression matters. Your oppression matters, but that's not an excuse to overlook your sexism. Radical feminism understands racial and class oppression. It still calls out marginalized men who may exert power over women in their communities because gay men can also be misogynist, right? Cynically. So it's rejected. Like another example, we are almost getting to the end of these examples. Marginalized masculinity. Marginalized masculinity. Um, so this subset of men are the ones who are excluded from hegemonic power due to race, class, or disability. An example would be of a marginalized masculinity. These are men who are excluded from hegemonic power due to race, class, or disability. What would be an example of that? A man who is excluded from um, what else? Race, class, or disability. A black man, right? Black man, yeah, a black man is a good example. So, a black, indigenous, poor men who they face systemic discrimination, like racism, uh, whatever, classism, everything. So, they face systemic discrimination even if they display traditional masculine traits. They are still masculine and denied access to societal power. So, they are excluded. Excluded. So, what do we say to that? Marginalized masculinity. Your oppression matters, but it doesn't excuse sexism. Radical feminism, wait. Yeah, radical feminism understands racial and class oppression, but still calls out marginalized men who may exert power over women in their communities. Black men exerting power over black women. Rejected. Okay. So I want us to finish with what we started with. We started with positive masculinity from Elder Terry and with neo-patriarchal masculinity. That's what I want us to look at right now. Um, so let us start with positive masculinity. Yeah, positive masculinity. We already gave an example. Democrats, most Democrats men present us with positive masculinity. So just a minute. Okay. So this one, it's a newer model. The traits include empathy, vulnerability, equity, consent, respect, all those good things. They seek to redefine masculinity. They support gender equality. Yeah, and they support gender equality. So this one, they will support gender equality. Respect, consent, what else? Vulnerability. An example, we already got an example from the table, so I'll put Democrats here. Okay, so if positive masculinity is this good, they support gender equality, they are for respect, consent, vulnerability, all of those good things. Why do we still reject positive masculinity when it appears to be everything? Why would we reject a model that we promote as radical feminist? Yes. Why would we reject people who support gender equality, consent, vulnerability, respecting women? Women should be given the opportunity to also become leaders. Very many good things. Why would we reject a radical feminist? Why would we reject positive masculinity? Yes. Okay, so let us look at the reasons why positive masculinity is rejected by radical feminists. I have like three reasons. So reason number one, the reason why radical feminists reject positive masculinity is because positive masculinity often means men becoming better versions of themselves. Men should be more sensitive, men should be less violent, men should be more respectful, etc. But it still puts masculinity at the center of the conversation. So these ones are all about how can we improve men? How can we improve men? So that's the reason it still centers masculinity at the center of the conversation. So it's about men becoming less violent, more respectful, and supporting equality, things like that. So that's the reason number one. Number two, it's because positive masculinity assumes masculinity is natural and necessary. That's the reason, another reason why we reject positive masculinity. So they assume that masculinity is natural and necessary. So positive masculinity will say men will always be men. Let us just make them kinder. Let us make them more respectful. Let us just make them more empathetic to women. So they feel that masculinity is something natural. Okay. So radical feminists will ask, why are we preserving a system that has caused so much harm, even in the nice packaging like this one? Another reason why radical feminists will reject positive masculinity is positive is often performative or conditional. So many men will embrace positive masculinity until it costs them privilege. They will cry in private but still expect to lead. They'll respect women but still want them to be the unpaid carer. Radical feminists don't want men to be less violent. They want men to surrender power, and that is when we need to the line. That is another reason. Another reason why radical feminists reject positive masculinity It's because it can slow down the movement. Positive masculinity often becomes the safe, palatable version of feminism that corporations and politicians can embrace. So radical feminists doesn't want progress. They want uh, to do away with patriarchy. So it's rejected. Okay. So those are the reasons why we reject positive masculinity. It still works with patriarchy. Yes. I have the question.
The first reason that you gave, you said, so positive masculinity makes masculinity the center of the conversation. What should be the center of the conversation?
Equality. Okay, so let's look at one more thing because I think time is almost my time is almost coming to an end. Um, and the theory also talks about what are they called? Neo-patriarchal. Um, neo. Okay, so I will read what the theory said and then I'll read what I want to say. Masculinity, represented by the Republican Party, is best referred to as neo-patriarchal masculinity. They are the neo-patriarchal right. The key ideas of this include persistent gender roles, men are the providers, men are the protectors, women are for domestic responsibility and child rearing. They use cultural and religious justification for their gender roles, and they are in direct opposition to feminism as well. By the way, I think it's only submissive and positive men that are not in direct opposition to feminism. This one they claim they're feminist, even this one they claim they're feminist. But the rest, not so sure. Yeah, this one are indirect opposition, direct opposition. Perhaps not. I don't know. But what I know is positive and conclusive men claim to be feminists. All right. You were saying they are in direct opposition to feminist movements. You can have economic growth and development without dismantling the. So anyway, what is the difference between hegemonic and patriarchal? Because to me they sound almost the same. They want to be the heads, the providers. Women are for child rearing and domestic responsibility. So what is the difference between hegemonic and new patriarchal masculinity? Okay, so this is what I got. Neo-patriarchal masculinity believes in modern orders, but they still want to be the king in the house. So, for example, a man will say, I let my wife work, but she must still respect me. You can also say, yes, my wife should pursue her career, she should get educated, but at the end of the day, she should not challenge male authority. So it has reinvented itself to suit the modern day lifestyle. I could say that. So they are new to suit um modernity. So let me so they will sorry, this patriarchy that reinvents itself to survive modern day society, especially in post-colonial, religious, and culturally conservative settings. It tries to blend tradition with selective modernization. It says, let women work, but make sure they still serve their husbands. Let women get educated, but they should not challenge male authority. It is rooted in cultural and religious values. It preserves male dominance in the family and community. It is often anti-feminist, disguised as protective. So they are very present in societies that adopt Western technology but reject Western gender norms. So let's put that down. So obviously it's rejected for obvious reasons. I don't think we need to go there. Okay, so what am I trying to say? In my opinion, don't believe masculinity can be sanitized into something safe or harmless. We cannot we cannot reinvent masculinity into something healthy or into something that does not hurt women. Because at its core, the way I see it personally, at its core, masculinity is dominance. It's the man that I am dominant. Whatever happens, whether I'm a feminist or not, I am no, there's no even space for it. So that's how I see it. There is no healthy way of being of saying that you are a masculine guy, because clearly we have rejected positive masculinity as radical feminist. Um, these are the ones that I was able to get. So I didn't see any type of masculinity that is accepted by radical feminists. So anyway, what do you think? What do you think about masculinity? Do you think we can have masculinity in the most in a way that doesn't demean women?
I don't think so because, as you've said, masculinity at its core, being the belief that men are superior or dominant, there's no room for that.
Anybody who thinks masculinity can be healthy.
What of femininity?
What of what?
Femininity, do you believe that
Femininity.
raise up? Because we call ourselves radical feminists.
Yes.
That's men. Do you believe femininity as well is okay?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, masculinity and femininity are socially constructed. Like say, men are this way and women are this way. And that it's natural for a man to be masculine, it's natural for a woman to be masculine, which is not the case. So I don't think there is a healthy way of being masculine. And even femininity, which is submission, being passive or things like that. Radical feminists would still reject femininity in my opinion. So the objective of my study was to show that there is no way we could practice masculinity in a safe. Anybody else?
I think social contracts.
Social?
You say social construct.
Yes.
Is anything that is a sign of social construct?
Is
There would be good things that are socially constructed.
like
Is it, I don't have examples, but I like as a concept, maybe society can construct something and it's meaningful, it's fine.
Kind of. Okay. I mean, I don't think the rejection of masculinity is majorly considered for social construct. But I know the reason is while it was socially constructed, the society has managed to um the society has managed to define it in only these characteristics, only these traits, and that is what it is. So I feel I think I think masculinity can only be defined as how the society has constructed it right now. Or even for time in model, and that definition is what makes it say something to be rejected.
anybody else wants to say something? Oh yeah. All right. I think that is all. Because I don't want to introduce something else because clearly there's no time. I wanted us to talk about so Democrats chose team walls. as their ideal presidential candidate for 2024. But clearly, he presents himself as a positive masculine guy. So my question is, then who should they have picked as the most suitable candidates for the 2024 uh, presidential elections? If this one is rejected, then who would be the ideal candidates? But I'm not sure if we go into that discussion, time will be. I have like 10 minutes, right? So if anyone who thinks this is made the right candidate other than Tim Wolf. Yes.
Well, since the test is radical feminism, had to be a radical feminist.
Exactly.
So whoever that would have been, if they took the boxes of radical feminism, they would have been the right candidate. But I don't think there was anyone who existed who actually filled those boxes within the Democrat Party, as far as I know.
Yes. But even if they existed that radical feminist, do they have the ability to pick a radical feminist as Democrats?
If they have the ability to,
Do they have the ability to pick a radical feminist candidate?
they do, but they just prefer this.
Yeah. Yeah, they prefer this one because he's white, he is he's family, he's a man, so he appeals to the larger vote, right? Other than any other candidate. So, but if you ask me, I don't think they would even have the ability because these people are really very feminist and they work within hatred. So they can't pull a radical, they're like stuck in mud. They cannot do that because they're not radical. So I don't even think they could have done. Well, that's just my opinion. So, yes.
A question. So all the type that you have put on the board. So if you're not all that you want,
If you're not all this,
assuming that such people exist, which I want to believe.
if you're not all this, then maybe you're a radical feminist. What depends on the don't know. Just yes. You're just
No, I was saying you're just a person.
a person
Because I don't know, I'm not sure if this is the opposite of radical feminism. No.
So if I am not all of this, then I must be something.
So as a man, for example, like okay, this okay, positive if you're positive masculinity, I know we've said that the problem is it puts masculinity, is it men at the center as opposed to equality. But if I fall in this category, what's the problem?
This category.
Yeah.
If you put here,
Yeah.
what's the problem?
Yeah.
We find the problem.
Because the problem you've said is it puts men
And
at the center, but
they assume that it's natural. Masculinity is something natural.
by something natural, it means you're just born
In-
like that.
in- As a man, I am natural. Yes.
Masculinity means better than a woman.
Yes.
Inherently
In my
better.
head, masculine is dominant. I'm dominant. You were saying?
Then we just get, then that means it takes us back to, should we be, is there really something like, then it means masculinity and femininity are bad things. And then that takes us to gender. And then that takes us to trans, the issue with trans people. And are they valid to feel the way they feel? Because someone who's trans, I was born female, but I am more inclined inside, I am masculine. So is that masculine a bad thing? So is it a bad thing for because I don't think when they say their identity is masculine, I'm not sure if they mean, they
They
want
mean
to be
this way.
dominant and things like that. Because I feel like when we attach dominance to masculinity as a concept, then it's already a bad thing. Then I think now that is consequential to the end now, transgender individuals, because I feel like it's when we start now discrediting, which it means we would be doing, when we start discrediting femininity and masculinity, then it invalidates transgender. I don't know if anyone understands.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Sure. I think how maybe we can, that's a very valid point. I think how we can maybe solve it is to um, juggle different definitions of masculinity.
Okay.
Because I think if we focus in this context that masculinity is what you have shown us it is, then it makes total sense how it should be totally rejected. Yeah. But if we were to say, okay, how are we defining masculinity? And then someone says, well, I don't define masculinity as dominant. I define masculinity as I feel like I'm male. Yeah. And male doesn't mean dominance. It maybe feels whatever someone who is trans will say they feel. I won't try to describe it, but there's something which they say is what they are naturally attracted to, or they naturally connect to, if I can call it like that.
Okay.
And that has nothing to do with me being better than someone else or my role in society and all this. So I think if we were to say this study is focusing on this definition of masculinity you have given us, which I think is totally correct and valid, then we are able to separate, and this will not do damage to transgender rights, because what we're talking about here is different from what transgender rights is talking about.
So are you saying, well, I understand what you're saying and I agree. So are you saying that masculinity can be redefined into something else that is not this?
I'm saying it has to be, because even our rules tell us in methodology, symbols have multiple interpretations or meanings. So even this symbol of masculinity, if we say it has only one definition, we'll fall into a trap, which is what Joy was saying, that if we say masculinity is this thing, then we are invalidating the transgender experience. Then we become trans exclusionary radical feminists, which we reject, because we're not just radical feminists, we are trans inclusive radical feminists, and we would reject trans exclusive radical feminists.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the time is almost.
I was thinking, I at least personally, when I hear masculinity, I feel like it's all this. It's a mindset, yeah, where someone thinks I am all of that. Let me take the hegemonic features. I am all of that because I am a man. You see?
Yeah.
Just because I have muscles, I have this and this and this, then it automatically means I'm supposed to behave like this. And because a woman doesn't have those things, then she's supposed to behave differently. I think that's the mindset they have. I have muscles, I can perform hard tasks that a woman cannot do. I can, people will fear me if I look like this. So because a woman doesn't have that, then she's not masculine. You get?
Yes.
So I think that's how I define masculinity. So when a trans man says, I don't feel like a man, I feel like a woman, they feel the need to transform, not to have those features that make people masculine. So they have to double down to become pretty and all that so that you don't become masculine. I think it's a mindset because of how they are physically built.
Joy, and then just
My other concern is this subordinated masculinity. Okay, there it says they don't conform to dominant ideals. So are they is it really masculinity? They don't conform to dominant ideals.
okay, we can answer that.
Yeah, later.
Steve, you had I forgot, I'm sorry. And then respectful. You go ahead and say.
I'd like to know, like, I could clearly see what marginalized. I'd like to know why marginalized is different from toxic or generic. One, because I could not see why they would be separate. And secondly, or how they do not benefit from what you say, the, those, how and what and those things that you mentioned. And then I would just want to know how subordinated, not sure if I ask you, how they benefit from, from masculinity. I did not, yeah, I did not hear that. And then is there such a thing as, or I guess that is just the question about gender. If there is a man and there's a woman, is such a thing.
Okay. Yes, Miss Pan.
And in your card, you have to defining the term and then using different definition. The contrast doesn't look very honest. If you use one definition, you contrast both in that same definition, and then in the new definition, you contrast both. You don't say like you define a car, everything will be different. You're using a completely different definition on the other side. But if
Okay, so thank you. Yes, yes. So, mine, I don't know whether it's supposed to, it's like, if in an ideal world where we don't have a society constructing different gender roles and attaching them to different sexes, could we really have the transgender persons in an ideal society that does not define gender and attach it to different sexes? Okay, thank you. So we pray. Let's pray. Yeah, God, we thank you so much for everything that you are learning. Some listening rapidly, so we actually like no. Thank you so much for listening. We are accountable and one for each other. May you continue being with us in the way you want.